Good morning again, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a second video to you today on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know, and that is sin, with the emphasis of its connection to crime, because there is some overlap. I'll go over that, hopefully, and justice and karma. Kind of tie it all together in a few minutes, 5 or 6 minutes maybe. There's a lot of confusion about the idea of sin and morality, and it's been made much, much worse by the miscommunication on the part of the church, any church, pretty much any modern church. From what I've heard anyway, the things that are being told to people who come in with questions as far as what sin is, what constitutes morality, why it's important, and how it is relevant, more importantly. None of this is being explained clearly at all. So people have almost completely, in my experience, people have rejected the idea of morality in favor of what's called evidence-based decision-making and other things like that. Amorality, science telling you what to do instead of making judgment calls. So anyway, to get to the subject, sin exists, and it's not necessarily what you think it is, because you've likely heard the wrong story. But sin is a very real thing. Sin is, in a perfect world, sin and crime are actually the exact same thing. They're two synonyms for the same idea. In our world, however, crime is something different. In a conventional meaning, in a normal, common meaning, crime is when a legal symbol fits a behavior. We don't care if it's a good behavior or a bad behavior. That's a bastardization is the word of the word crime. But crime must involve, and I've talked about this, this isn't even about crime necessarily. I'm not going to go down a tangent, but crime must involve an injury of some kind that is non-consensual, a breach of contract. And the reason I mention that in this video is because that's also coincidentally the definition of sin. So if you do something that hurts somebody, it may not be immediate. It may not be instantaneous. It may not even be realized for many, many years, the actual damage that it does, much less come full circle in a human lifespan, and much less come back immediately, but it does. It's analogous to swimming in a pool with people. If you'll forgive the disgusting metaphor. When you sin, you're doing something in the pool that you shouldn't. And you can imagine what that it might be. You can swim away fast, so to speak. Swim to the other corner, depending on how big of a pool it is. Happens, we're all in a pretty big pool here. But maybe not as big as you think. Especially when there's a ton of people in it, right? Doing the same thing. This is where it becomes a problem. This is where sin and crime, which, as mentioned, is the same thing if you look at it that way, becomes a very big problem when there's a very big number of people doing it all at the same time, because the water, so to speak, which is a metaphor for, our average fortunes in life, the attitudes people have to take on, the regard for our neighbors and ourselves even, is affected by that water, so to speak. That water is a metaphor for our climate, our atmosphere, the prevailing attitude and rapport that we all share. So what does sin do? When you do something selfish, for example, that takes from someone without their having volunteered to give something, that's an example, right? Any kind of breach of contract that has a cost to it. It is that simple. It's not complicated. So the other thing we hear is that things are too complicated for average people to think about. You need a preacher, you need a judge, you need a doctor. They're too complicated for you to think about. So leave it to us. Leave it to the thinkers to make your decisions for you. We'll chew your food, and you can have seconds when we're done with it. We'll give you a menu of the things that are left over after we have chosen. In terms of ideas, in terms of resources, actual resources, the common thing. Anyway, sin is very real, and it affects you circularly, directly, on a long enough timeline. And this is the problem. How do you identify it? How do you know when you're taking something you shouldn't? Well, there you have it. I mean, sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not obvious. Was it consensual? Was there a cost to it? Does it make things better or worse? All these words have come under fire. All these words have become challenged. Better, worse. These are qualitative assessments. Better than what? Okay, that's a fair question. Better than what? Well, if we're not being ridiculous, it's pretty clear what benefits the community in terms of health and happiness, and I think that that's our metric. That always is our metric. It doesn't need to be said every day. The quality of life of people in general, everyone in the community, hopefully, health and happiness, and the things that contribute to that are good, objectively, measurably good. Moral things. Things that harm people, especially when it is non-consensual, can be said to be evil. It's not even complicated. Moral behavior is an agreement. Morality is an agreement. And as mentioned, legality and morality, in some universe, they're the same thing. And they probably should be. Anyway, it's a deep subject. But it's not super complicated. People try to complicate it so that they can take the decision from you. Chew your own food. Make your own decisions. I believe in you. You can do it. Have a great day. If you have questions or comments, reach out to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.